I thought this would be a perfect time to talk about change and unification. And the reason why this has come to my attention is because, of course, it's very personal. I have noticed that sometimes, maybe more than just a little, there are times that I go to create resistance to changes that are coming down the path or that even that I want to create. And to give you a little bit of a background as to why that is for me, the individual, and perhaps something that you can laugh about, but hopefully not too much, is I want to talk about my father for a moment. So when legislation was changed in the state of Arizona that it was required, I think it was a federal law, that everyone had to wear seatbelts in the vehicles. And of course, the cars wouldn't actually start unless you had the seatbelt plugged in. And we still have that today with the beeping sound. Well, my dad felt very constrained by the idea that one would be forced to wear a seatbelt. And let me remind you that prior to that, in terms of driving, in terms of my growing up, number one, babies or children were put up in the front with no baby seats. And the lap belts, if you did put a lap belt around the child, it's literally covering your face. It's not necessarily working in any way, shape, or form. And so what we had is the mom method. Moms would stick out their arms trying to protect their children with their right arm as they were driving the car to prevent the child from hitting the dash and perhaps even exiting the vehicle through the front windshield. Now, this legislation got created in terms of having seatbelts in an effort to protect people, to help people to be more safe. Now, my dad felt threatened with that, and he didn't like that. And so he determined that he was going to fake out the system, and evidently someone had made a fake seatbelt, meaning they took the metal piece and they cut it off. And he took that and put it into the seatbelt in the car to actually create the illusion that he was buckled in. And he literally let the seatbelt not be used by any way, shape, or form so that he could drive the way that he wanted to do without any seatbelt whatsoever. And I'm putting that forth because that would explain, to me at least to some degree, why in different circumstances that I would be resistant to certain kinds of changes, meaning I grew up with it. But it's still not necessarily an excuse, and I'm saying that for myself. Dad did what he wanted to do, and perhaps you have been influenced in those kinds of ways from your parent or perhaps other people as well. But if we're going to embrace change, and we're going to do it from a unification perspective, we have to realize that change isn't necessarily something that we need to address with states of resistance, whether it's been taught to us or whether we just have a stubbornness within us. Again, sometimes when we want to create a change, even though we know that we want to create it, there's this idea that I don't want to do that because it feels like somehow someone's making me. No one else is doing this. It's just me, shall we say, butting heads with my own self. That could be weight loss. That could be a habitual change with regards to getting up in terms of eating or any kind of different change. And yet there's this struggle sometimes, and that comes from one place, and of course that's the mind, and most importantly the ego. So it's the ego that's creating this state of separation. So this morning, it was yesterday, I was driving and I was sitting, kind of absently at the light, just holding the wheel at a stoplight, and I looked over to my left, and on the above the exhaust pipe, which is a mammoth exhaust pipe of this big truck with dual tires in the back, it had the little bumper sticker that says, Priuses eat this. And I was offended by that. I mean, I thought, why would anyone put a comment like that on the side of their vehicle? Because, again, we share the climate, the air with everybody. And so it was quite a statement of polarization, if you can call it that. And so I started thinking a little bit, now what would be the opposite of that? So I actually had to go online, and I did so. And there's another bumper sticker that's evidently common for the Prius owners that says something to the effect of breathe easy, because these people are driving electric vehicles, meaning they're not creating any kind of emission. And yet, this change ultimately is, I'll dare say, something that we want to create, meaning we want to go forward to create something different than what we've been creating for the sake of progress, for the sake of humanity, and for a whole lot more in terms of just creating this unification. And yet we see in this perfect example in terms of two opposing bumper stickers, the idea of, again, separation, one adhering to one set of values and the other creating the illusion of just the opposite of that. And I think that perfectly describes our times, doesn't it? Meaning this is something that we've been going through a great deal. This is something that we're in the midst of as we speak. And that's why I think the timing is perfect to address this within ourselves. That you have to address that there's a lot of people, you and I, that may be hesitant or even fearful of those kinds of changes that are taking place in this moment and or that are in process to take place in the moment. So I was driving this morning with my son to the market, and this time we were engaged in a lovely conversation, and a dove, how sometimes they fly real close to the vehicles, and it just barely missed our car, but there was an oncoming car, and it literally hit this oncoming car because it didn't see it. And it went from this beautiful animal to just a pile of rubbish that literally felt like it just got discarded to the ground. And it changed the energy with regards to my son and I having conversation. It felt like we had gotten hit emotionally with this beautiful animal, not even necessarily appreciating its beauty until this traumatic event took place, and suddenly we were stopped in our tracks to have to make the adjustment that animal is now dead, that's no longer living, it's no longer here. And so we continued down the path, we went to the market, and now we're on our way back. This is again this morning. And we were in two lanes. My son's in the left lane driving, and I'm in the passenger seat, and we're over in this lane. And over here is a van, and ahead of the van is this semi-truck. And the semi-truck has a huge load. I think it's wood, like plywood. And this van's coming pretty fast down the path. So I'm thinking to myself that he's going to get real close to the behind of that semi-truck and then zip out in front of us real quickly, which means that we need to apply our brake to allow him space to do that, or he's going to hit the back of that semi. And we literally just watched him hit the back of the semi so hard that the back of the vehicle of the van came 2 or 3 feet off of the air. And it was shocking to see. And the reason I'm addressing that is because it's very traumatic. So we had the life of the dove that became that, and now we're faced with the idea that this person that hit this semi may or may not be here any longer. And we've gone from one emotional event to a significantly stronger event. So we're pulling off to the side of the road to find out if he's okay. And sure enough, the door opens to the vehicle, and he steps out, and he seems to be walking. Now, I'm in the passenger seat on this side, literally, as we go by, watching this as you would see a film. I can see it perfectly as he goes up into the windshield and comes back down again, evidently, and by the way, just completely destroying the vehicle. And the reason I'm using these two anecdotes that happened to us this morning is because we're still dealing with trauma. This is something that I referenced in the teleconference that I did on January 6th. And if you haven't heard that, please, I'll make a link right here on the YouTube. Go and take a listen to that, because I put forth 12 things that are going to take place in the year 2021, and all of them impact you. And this change, or these changes that we're addressing, can be impacted beautifully in the flow, or we can literally create more kinds of trauma, or even at the lesser end, drama. And yet we don't have to. And this is what I want to convey, hopefully with the tenderest of heart, with compassion, to create a unification within ourselves so that we can extend this energy and this thought and this thinking to others as well, who may be very agitated or anxious even with regards to the changes. And all change is sometimes met with the states of resistance, oftentimes with some kinds of people, a great deal of dread or fear, to the point that they really don't feel that they can exist or even express themselves. And this is a tremendous time to see this, or to observe this within ourselves, so that we can create this unification within ourselves, and then ultimately with one another, for those who want that. Not everybody wants to create change, and so not everyone wants to do so in a unified state, and we need to honor that. But if this is something that appeals to you, then allow yourself to see yourself as you are, meaning not pretending to see yourself that, yes, you've got it all together, or now you're in a polarized, wonderful position compared to what you were moments ago, based upon whatever perception that might have been, or belief, or anything else. Think of a football game, how polarized that we get, that our team versus this team, and yet we have this opportunity to come together, that the idea that this was something that we wanted to create, meaning we're creating a competition, if you will, but in a beautiful way, meaning to help one another to grow and to allow ourselves to excel in the athletic abilities that we have to play the game. So if we can see that unification is something that's really, really key to our going forward, then we don't need to be afraid that unification means it's a threat to us. It's an opportunity for us to embrace what I will call the divine flow here. And the more that we do that, and I should back up for half a moment, because we have come, all of us, into this world, right? This whole world that is polarized, in terms of light and dark, and male and female, and all kinds of different things. And we really want to appreciate that. That's nice, but it doesn't necessarily represent the true us. And so if we go within and connect to that part, we must understand that we're much more than just being male, or one color or one faction versus another. And as we do that, it enables us to see ourselves as a whole, which is very important. And as we choose to do that, it actually is very enabling. Now, if you think of it from a prosperity perspective, those people who have learned even physically or materially to enjoy prosperity have done so through collaboration. Sometimes it's been done through force or control, and yet lovingly, those days are quite lovingly coming to a close, where control of any kind is going to become harder and harder to participate in, which means that you have the choice to break away from that now. So if you feel controlled, that's something that can't take place within you unless you choose it. By letting go of the idea that something can control you, which may mean change of any kind, then it allows you to be in a more open state to embrace the idea that we are going forward. If we don't, then we might find ourselves having to address further aspects of trauma, where we have life and then suddenly it's removed from us, or we have another event just after that where it suddenly is a very traumatic event. And I'm suggesting that life doesn't have to be like this as we embrace the unification. So I felt this was really important to share, and that's why I wanted to bring up the topic of change and unification, because if we address it within ourselves, it will make our life individually and even collectively so much easier. Thank you for listening.